Ich heiße Fred Coco
Okay,
und
good.
das ist für mich eine Ehre, Ihnen kennenzulernen. Und das ist auch eine Ehre für diese Verlags und für mich auch, mit Ihnen sprechen zu können diese Abend. Und ich möchte Ihnen herzlich willkommen, Herr Ralf Radlanski, Dr. Ralf Radlanski.
Ja, vielen Dank. Mein Portugiesisch ist nicht so. Ich kann es nicht. Also insofern, ja, great.
Good evening. I have the honor to receive here with us tonight Professor Dr. Ralf J. Radlanski. He's a German anatomist, orthodontist, and university professor. He's the director of the Department of Craniofacial Developmental Biology at the Center for Dental and Craniofacial Sciences, Charité University Medicine Berlin. Studies and research focused on human face. Author of the book, The Face, Illustrated Atlas of Clinical Anatomy. Well, tonight, Dr. Ralf will talk about behind the book, the making of the face. So you're very, very welcome in the name of this publishing company and myself. We're honored to have you here, Dr. Ralf.
Yeah. Thank you, Fred, for this nice and friendly introduction. So do you want me to open the presentation right now and to share the screen? Or how does it work technically?
Well, you can do the however you would like. That tonight's show is yours. So just make yourself at home. And I have a few questions first. If you want to, if you'd be so kind to answer it first, we would like to know a little bit about your background, about your history, and the challenges you have been through to accomplish this wonderful task, which is your atlas. And that we are very proud to have published in Portuguese.
Yeah, okay, good. So go ahead with the questions.
All right. So we want to know a little bit, why did you make that new atlas, although there were so many good textbooks on anatomy available anyway?
Yeah, there have been, or there are so many good textbooks available and also atlases. However, they had one shortcoming. It is when you flip the pages, you all of a sudden land in a different region, not what I expected. When I was a student in anatomy, I expected that I have an atlas where when I looking at one image, showing some cytos or whatever there is, then I flipped the page and I was hoping to be one layer further down, but the same view, the same point of view, the same angle, whatever, only one layer deeper. But this is very rarely the case. So when you go through the face, which is very complicated, you are at the cheek and you see some of the chewing muscles, and then you flip the page and you expect to go even further, but all of a sudden you see the eye. Then you want to know something about the muscles of the eye, and you want to go step by step further inside. All of a sudden they change to the ear. So that it wasn't consequential in such a way that we had layer by layer. And then the Quintessence company came to me. Dr. Kolzer was the actual person that came to me and asked me, we want to make a new atlas. Do you have any preliminary requests how we should make the atlas? And then I was thinking of my student times as, yes, there's one thing that I really desire to have. It is an atlas that goes layer by layer. Can we do that? And he said to me, you can do the atlas the way you want it. And this is how the idea was born, to make an atlas layer by layer.
Oh, that's really amazing. And your book is a huge piece of art. And we are really, really happy to have the honor of publish your book in Portuguese. And there is another question for you, Dr. Ralf. We would like to know, did you really use images of your daughter to create that atlas?
Yes, that was also an innovative thing. The atlases that we had before were made from cadavers. They're made from the cadavers that lying on the flap, and then they were all lying there fixed in formalin in their position backwards. It looks a bit awkward when you go to the preparation side. But then thinking of how could we make a new innovative atlas, and knowing about the technology of MRI imaging, we had the idea that we could make an atlas from the inside of a living human being. And we thought of my daughter. My daughter was a medical student at that time, and she agreed of going inside of the MRI tube, and she spent there half a day. And then we took 600 images of her head. As a matter of fact, we also took 600 images of my head, because we also planned to make an atlas with, a young female and an older male. But then, doing all the concepts, we ended up at 390 pages with the lady only, with my daughter only. So then we said, well, we don't want to make the comparison to the older man also. So, but only very few images taken from my head, like the maxillary sinus. That's also mine then. But actually, it is my daughter that we depicted there. That's right. And I need to mention the artist who did this. This is Wesker. He's one of the most skilled and famous anatomy artists in the world. And he has painted, from head to toe, all the anatomic images. And he invented the technology of painting using Photoshop. I will explain that to you in my presentation also.
Oh, excellent. And anatomy is always the key to everything. And it's very interesting the way you have planned and the way you did your book. Very, very nice and amazing work. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. Well, there is another question. Right. How has been the feedback to the Atlas since it was first published in 2012?
The feedback was overwhelming. We did not expect that many other disciplines, which are more apart from medicine, were also interested in that atlas. Of course, this atlas is meant for, let's say, medical students, for dental students, for people dealing with head and face surgery, but also musicians came to us. We know that in some schools of music, this atlas is in the library and also used by the people, for example, by the trumpet players who need to have a very fine control of all the muscles around the mouth, for example, or by speech therapists who also need to explain to their patients which muscle must be relaxed or which muscle must be set under better tension. So they have special trainings, and they also need to visualize everything with that atlas. Or also in the film industry, actors who are able to control their face in very peculiar ways to maybe underscore what they want to express, not only verbally, but also with their facial expression. They also study that, to raise only one eyebrow and leave the other one down. So how did they do it? What's the anatomy behind it? So they really study also anatomy from that atlas. So that's what we also know. And also computer graphics animators that, with the computer animated movies, they also need to know the peculiarities of the face. And they also use our atlas. So this is a widespread audience of the atlas.
Oh, that's exactly what I was about to ask you next, because I read on your preface, it is that true that from the German edition, the circle of readers is not confined to the field of medicine and related subjects, but you already answered that.
Yeah,
and that's really interesting, because it's not only for medicine. You can use in different areas, and anatomy is always interesting for everything.
That's right. And also we're surprised that it has been translated into 16 languages in the meantime. So this is also an overwhelming story of success. I hadn't expected that. So.
It's because it is a great piece of art.
Yeah. I'm convinced of that. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. But now, feel comfortable, Dr. Radlanski, to share your screen and start your presentation. Now, we're going to be able to watch Dr. Ralf Radlanski lecture about the making of the face. So please, Dr. Ralf, make yourself at home. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Yeah, okay. Thank you again for your introduction, Fred. Yeah, hello, everybody. This is a little presentation about behind the making of the face, the atlas. Let's see. So this atlas is very special. It contains the muscles of facial expression, as you can see here, with all the different expressions that we have. And as you can see here, it is something like a mixture of anatomical drawings and also photographies. And we were just mentioning that all the insides of the atlas were made from my daughter, which is true, but the outer appearance, the face that you see here, that is a professional photo model from Munich. We decided to do so because we didn't want to see my daughter being dissected, but all the insides, they are from my daughter, and these images were painted by Wesker, and then there were and the foundation of these images were a series of MRI images. I come to that later on. So this is just the outer appearance. And what we also have as an innovation in that atlas, when you take away the skin, you see the fat compartments, the superficial musculoaponeurotic system, which is very important in plastic facial surgery. And it is very important to know that there are these different pockets, which are certain compartments where the fat contents are there. They are very much individualized, so you cannot really take the image from here and say this is also the case in my patient. There are very many individual variations, but you must be well aware that there are many of those compartments. And also from the side, you can again see we have colorized them here, but you see some of the images that show these lines where you see the borders of these compartments. And then what is also important for the students to know that the layering of fat and muscles is always in such a way done that it goes stepwise. So if you, for example, lift the orbicularis oculis, then you can also see that there's some fat underneath. And as we see when we get older and the distribution of fat is altering over lifetime, it could also be that this fat massive volume can increase also here, which shows, of course, from the protrusions of the skin, and also some other regions where the fat content is increasing. That's what you will notice when you get older, and the anatomy explains why it is that case. So, and also we see, for example, the Perotic Glands. So all the structures which are there are depicted in very much detail and layer by layer, which is very important, and also with two main views, the view from the side and the view from the front, so that you have a certain orientation. And it goes all the way down now. We, for example, can see here all the muscles like the temporalis, the masseter, the buccinator, the levator labia superioris, and the anguli oris, and the depressor, and the orbicularis oris muscles. They're all depicted by superscripts. In this case, for the PowerPoint presentation, I have just put in these arrows here and put the names on the side. But in the atlas, all the structures are labeled. By the way, it is 960 structures in the face that needed labeling. So then you go all the way down so that you can see the most deep layers of muscles, like here, the temporalis, which is cut away to make the temporal fossa visible, and also the buccinator and the orbicularis oris. And as you see from the front, you can also see how it is cut here to make the teeth also visible. And then finally, when you have gone all the way through the layers, you can then see the attachment regions where the muscles attach on the skull. This is also an interesting, let's say, test question for the students. They should be able to label all these single regions of attachment there. Why is it important for us? In our practice, where I'm working as an orthodontist and in craniofacial orthopedics, in maxillofacial surgery, in plastic surgery, you always have to be well aware of the individual anatomy of your patient. And this is why we apply the visualization in cone beam CT to get the heart tissue straight. And with that, you can do all the anatomy. And then we also apply MRI imaging. By the way, this is an image of my head. And I don't know if you recognize me, but I can recognize me very, very well from the outer contours of my face. And of course, this has also been a foundation of creating the atlas in the sections that we also have in the atlas. Well, and then, as I mentioned in the introductory talk, the atlas has been a success story. It has been translated into, at the moment, 16 languages, and this is just an image of my bookshelf. There are languages that I'm not even capable of understanding, so I can read some Portuguese. So if you look at the most recent edition, it is close to Latin, so that's why I can read a bit of it. Yeah, and here you see, I just want to give that image. Hopefully it works also on this software. Come on. This movie, it should be embedded here. It does not. This movie is meant to show the flipping pages, so actually it should work, but Windows 10 is the 10th effort of Microsoft to produce a working software, but maybe this is just a thing, it doesn't work anymore. So here you see Carl Wesker and me working on the atlas. So Carl Wesker is an artist, and he has invented the technique to paint using Photoshop. As you can see here, he has a graphic tablet, he has some sketches there, he has some sketches of mine, and then he has a computer. And we are working on the screen to tune the pictures that he just laid out. But how did it begin? It began in 2008 when Bert Kolster, who was one of the CEOs, came to me and asked me, we want to make a new atlas. Do you have any preferences? And I said, well, my preferences is that I want to make an atlas which is layer by layer. When you flip the page, you always go to the next layer and you will never lose any control. And these are the other people from Quintessence. David Kuhn, who was one of the program manager who was guiding us through the production process. And this is, of course, Carl Wesker, the artist. Yeah, and then we wanted to make this atlas. And here you see, hopefully this movie will work. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Layer by layer, you never lose your orientation.
Yeah, so this is what we wanted to show, layer by layer. And how did we make it? We wanted to make it from living anatomy, not from cadavers. And so we talked to my daughter, and that's her. She has been a student at that time. At the moment, she has arrived at being a doctor. She's in her residency for psychiatry. Maybe that's why you see the brain here. And we used 600 MRI images of my daughter, Jana, in order to create these pictures. Because in the MRI, you can see hard tissue and soft tissue as well. And we have been, of course, under very good connection to the radiologist to really interpret these images properly. And it started out, and it was not that easy. It started out that we had to plan the layers by layer. So which is the appropriate layer, which is a real layer? Actually, in human anatomy in the face, you cannot just go down layer by layer. You have to understand which structures should belong to a certain layer. So we created the layers, and we created the intertwining of the vessels and the muscles. How's the best way to visualize them? So it was a long way of spending hours with discussions to arrive at this artificial layer by layer sequence. And you see a lot of colored pencils, not very much digital. I worked on these printouts in order to depict the things that I asked Carl Wesker to add here. And also some comments that we made. Do we do it here? Do we have it here? Do we take that away? Do we cut the section here? What do we want to show underneath? And so this was one of the most complicated things. And this took us a year to make the concept, which should be contained in which layer. And we also did seek the cooperation with specialists. We did not do it on our own, not Carl Wesker and me alone. There are very many cooperative people, like, for example, the nose surgeon. He's a plastic surgeon for ENT, and he's a specialist in creating noses. This is Sergei Jovanovic. He's a Berlin professor for ENT surgery. Or here, this is Alexander Chakalov. He's a maxillofacial surgeon in Hamburg. And this is Ulrike Pilze. She's an anatomist and a medical doctor in Austria. And we did ask her and all the other colleagues to give input in order to make this atlas the way it really arrived at, the way it is now. And we also asked the angiographic people from the radiology department. They supplied us with angiographic images, and also I had angiography myself, and we could really see the pathway of the vessels. So it has been really painted from living situations. And then again, it has been coordinated with the images. Once we have done them, these images had to be coordinated with the text that is going with the images. And also there, it was good for me that I could see the images, and the text always describes what you really see. It is not an abstract text that is away from any images. When I wrote the text, I always did look at the images, and I hopefully did never write anything that you cannot see in the pictures. So what I wanted to give some explanations to the pictures that you really see what we have painted. And we spent so much time together, as you can see here. So again, this is Karl Wesker on his computer and me, and we were discussing how to really do it. And also, Karl Wesker has his laboratory at his graphic department in Berlin. It is half an hour apart. You know, Berlin, like many other bigger cities, is a widely spread city. So it takes me half an hour of train ride to get to Karl Wesker. And he would also need half an hour to come to my place. So I spent much time in my place, and he did spend a lot of time in his place, but we communicated via telephone and email, whatever, immediately. And when it was necessary, then we would meet each other in person. It was long ago, before the pandemic time. So we spent 3 years together, working together on this atlas. And I can recall the times when we spent evenings in his laboratory. And then his wife would come and said, have you noticed that it is wide over midnight? Well, and maybe she gave us some port wine as a goodbye for me. And then I said, okay, now I leave for home, and then we continue working tomorrow. So we spend days, evenings, and even nights together working on this atlas. Yeah, see, this is now how he does it. He has this on the computer screen, and he has the graphic tablet with the digital pen. And now you can see how he creates it. So the movie is running, hopefully. You can see the changes on the screen while his hand is moving. And the positive thing is, since he has invented the technology of doing these images with Photoshop, you can enlarge it. So he can enlarge it in very big scale in order to be very precise in the way he can do the painting. And then he can shrink it to the actual desired size. See, now he is painting a vessel. And the supraorbitalis vein, as far as I see. Well, and this needs reworking, see. And again, here. Now we're on the screen only, so we don't see his hand. So it's like magic. Mm-hmm. So these were just some examples from the painting process. Now I can show you some stills. You can see that it's really painted by hand. So this is now the skull of my daughter. And you see this, like in scribbling with pencil, he starts out first, and then he does the colorization of that. And then you see this is the 3D arrangement with light and shadow to give the impression that we have a 3D model of a skull. And now you need to enter, for example, here, you need to enter the nose, so the cartilage of the nose. First of all, you'll do some scribbling here, and then you work it out in more detail with light and with shadow. Or here, the mentalis muscle. First of all, we need to find out the outline, as according to the MRI imaging. And then you make the foundation with this typical color. By the way, he always uses the same palettes, always the same color. This is also a benefit of this atlas. When you flip the pages, you never have any changes of color tones. In earlier times when artists did use oil paintings in order to produce the atlases with these very famous color plates, they always use oil colors. And as you see, if you do it by hand, you always have a different shade of all these colors. But using the digital way of painting, you have digitally confined numbers of colors, and then you have always the same colors. So this is really a standardization tool using the digital way of painting. And now you have to add some contours because the muscles run in bellies. You enlarge that, so you can enlarge it and be even more precise, putting light and shadow on, and then you can mark it here, and then you'll work it out in further detail in order to be able to have the real picture. And so he did it muscle by muscle for every single muscle. And also the same is true for the vessels. You start out with the outline in pencil. It's a digital pencil. Then you make the underlying color, which is blue, and then you put on light and shadow in order to make it even more bodily, more physically. You also put the shadow underneath, and then you can see how much it is suspended over the bony surface. And, so it goes step by step. It was another 2 years of working on these plates. And the beneficial thing, though, is since you go layer by layer, also in the painting process, you can also, or Carl Wesker always used the same skull. He did paint the skull only once. And then he added the muscles, and then he added another layer, and the different layer, and even a further layer up. And then he added all the vessels and the nerves and everything. So what the technique in Photoshop is that you can add or you can remove a layer. So he painted it from the bone to the surface. And he added the vessels on the other side. And we can also toggle the pages that way, see? So we wanted to go layer by layer, and as you can do so, you can see the mesenteric muscle. It's sectioned here, and the vessels do not change at all. Everything is the same. So this is also a didactic in order to make it possible for the student when he wants to learn it, flip the pages, and you don't have to learn all the structures anew, which have been on the side before, because they look exactly the same. They really are the same structures. So that is why when you flip the pages, you can focus more on the new structures, and you don't have to learn all the other structures since somebody had to paint everything anew. So this is not the case in our atlas. So your brain subconsciously remembers what your brain has seen before. See? Okay, and then all these 960 anatomical structures had to be labeled. And my other daughter, she's also a medical doctor, she was the one who identified all the structures and labeled them all. This is another way of quality control, so that several persons were involved. So she had all the images on our living room desk and put them in the right order. And first of all, we started out with numbers, and then we changed the numbers by the anatomical technical terms. And then it was important to talk to the graphic designer to make a book out of it. This is Bert Zender. He's in charge for the book, how the outer appearance of the book is. It's when you flip the pages, it goes what's on the left side, what's on the right side, what is when you flip the page, what's on the opposite side. So the sequence of these images had to be under a very good control. And he also interfered with the production process, where he said, when you flip this page here, you expect this one on the other side, but you have to paint that. And so we have to work it all over when he gave his comments on the technical aspect of how the book should be made. And then in 2012, we had the first edition, which came out. We met in a restaurant in Berlin, had some red wine, and we're very happy with the first edition of the book. And see, it was the illumination in the restaurant was not brightly illuminated. So Carl Wesker used his cell phone in order to shed light on the painting, on the pictures, to have them in the proper light. Yeah, and then when I was teaching, I was surprised by so many students that they had this book. So, for example, this is the master class in craniofacial genetic sciences in Switzerland, in Basel, where I was teaching. And you could see that all the students had the book. And also, when we were teaching on the skull, we always had the book underneath in order to give reference to the book. You see there are several copies of the book around on the table, and the students are very happy with always being able to check in the book what you can see in the real skull. And also, I was just wondering why this image is flipped, but I can change that. And then I was invited to Sao Paulo in 2019. So this is 2 years ago, I can recall. And I was overwhelmed by the reception of the book in Brazil. At that Congress, there were some 800 participants, and they all wanted a signature in the copy of the book. And it was really... it was a surprise for me to see that the people were so fond of the book. And still on Instagram, I can see still the people linking with the book and exchanging connections and also photographs with me on the book and with doing the signature. Yeah, so we also produced a little movie which runs exactly 1 minute. It shows the topographical anatomy layer by layer in the frontal view, and maybe you can also listen to the sound to the music there. Let's see if it works. I was wondering here. Let's see if it works. So you could see now that in this movie, you can see starting from the skin, going all the way down until you reach the surface of the bone. And then we go backwards with the layers, putting now the vessels and the nerves also intertwined with the muscles. So this is a didactic concept that we had in this atlas. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to show you behind the scenes of making this atlas. And I thank you for your kind attention so far. And I think now I can quit sharing the screen. Let's see if that works. Yes, here we go. So, and I'm ready for further questions if they
right.
arise.
Dr. Ralf, first of all, I would like to say that's really a scientific work of art, an amazing work of art. Congratulations to you and your staff that worked with you in this amazing book. And I'm sure after all you just showed us, it was really a hard but a very pleasant moment to do that with your friends and with your family also helping you with the book.
That's right.
We can see that you have put a lot of love and a lot of science on that too. And congratulations. And we are really proud to be able to republish your book in Portuguese. And you have that in many other languages as well. So what would you say to everybody that wants to learn more about anatomy, which is the key to everything? What would you say to someone who's just beginning its career? And what would you say for someone who has already an expertise being a professor? What would you say?
Well, how to start learning anatomy of the face, the proper technique, that's very complicated. You have to ask yourself questions. I think this is the best way for your brain to hook on. You want to, for example, say the skin is covering the face. So are there layers of the skin? Which layers are there? So what makes the skin? And then you have this question. And then you can maybe make sketches of your own and paint and draw all the layers yourself. And then you ask yourself, are there any nerves in the skin? Yes or no? You can look up the picture and say, oh, how far do these nerves go into the skin? Do they go to the epithelium or do they go to some layer beyond? And then you learn that. So if you ask yourself questions and then you retrieve the answer, I think this is the better way rather than just learning it in a stupid way by heart.
And also, what is very interesting, it's the concept that you have on your atlas. You have decided to use a living body as an example of anatomy, which is really interesting, and it's makes it very clear to understand anatomy that way, layer by layer. Very good.
Yeah, that's what we wanted. That's right. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the Portuguese edition, the brownish cover, that is the most artistic cover I've seen, the most attractive cover. I mean, I was loving the light blue cover, which is the German edition, and many other editions, but that one with this brownish, darkish, this really makes it looks like even more valuable. So congratulations to that graphic designer who was in charge of that. That's right. That's what it looks like, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good. Well, it was a very nice presentation. We have seen behind the scenes. We understood the work you've done. It wasn't easy for sure, but it was worth it, right?
It was a pleasure, and we enjoyed working. Work does not always have to be hard work. I mean, it was hard work, but it was not tedious work, or it was not work like hell. It was a work like joy. We enjoyed working together.
It's because you love what you do. That's why it's joyful.
Yeah, that's right.
Professor, it was a pleasure to talk to you this evening. And I'm really sure that our viewers will enjoy a lot your lecture, and we'll learn even more from you from that lecture, and a lot of enthusiasm to read your atlas and to have that to research and to study even more anatomy more and more, because anatomy is the key. I always say that. That's and right. You just gave a gift. You left a gift to the humankind with this piece of art. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation for this lecture of tonight. Und ich muss sagen, deine Präsentation war wunderbar, und es war eine Ehre, mit Ihnen sprechen. Und ich wünsche dir ein schönes Weihnachten und eine gute Rutsches in neues Jahr.
Oh, vielen Dank, Fred. Das freut mich sehr, dass du das auf Deutsch so schön gesagt hast. Ich würde es auf Portugiesisch gerne auch können, aber ich kann es leider nicht. Also insofern, ja, ich wünsche dir das Gleiche auch auf Deutsch. Also eine schöne Adventszeit, frohe Weihnachten und ganz herzlichen Dank, dass ich hier den Making-of von diesem Atlas präsentieren konnte. Ihr werdet jetzt ja portugiesische Subtitles drunter setzen, ne?
Ja.
Gut, okay.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank und auf Wiedersehen, Professor Ralf Radlanski.
Ja, auf Wiedersehen und vielen Dank. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay.